Welcome to another episode of Health Hustle Chronicles, where the grind meets growth in the world of healthcare. As you know, this ain't your typical podcast because I bring you some of the freshest, some of the livest guests from around the world, Craig. And today we have a very special guest who goes by the name of Phindile Chowa. She's a medical doctor at that. So let me give you a little insight to her background. Dr. Phindile Chowa, she's a board-certified emergency medicine physician based in Atlanta, Georgia. She's completed both her undergraduate studies and medical education at the University of Pittsburgh and went on to finish her emergency medicine residency at Harvard University. With extensive experience in leading an academic hospital, Dr. Chowa quickly rose to an administrative role within the emergency department, where she focused on improving patient experiences and streamlining healthcare delivery. The COVID-19 pandemic profoundly shaped her understanding of healthcare, revealing critical gaps in access and compassion within the system. Motivated by these insights, Dr. Chowa reimagined her medical career to place patient dignity and personalized care at the forefront. This vision gave rise to EM2U, a concierge medical practice that provides personalized in-home healthcare with a strong focus on postpartum health and wellness. Dr. Chowa prepares mothers for the often overlooked fourth trimester, ensuring that they're connected to essential partners, including lactation consultants, pelvic floor therapists, and mental health professionals. Through these collaborations, her practice offers a holistic approach to postpartum recovery, addressing both the physical as well as the emotional needs of new mothers. Dr. Chowa is also an author of the acclaimed book, What to Expect Next, a guide designed to empower mothers with practical tools, advocacy strategies, and support systems for navigating the postpartum journey. Unlike conventional postpartum resources, her book centers solely on maternal well-being, guiding mothers to build robust support networks and develop self-care routines during this critical period. In addition to her medical practice as well as writing, Dr. Chowa hosts the podcast Fourth Trimester Voices, where she sheds light on the healthcare experiences of women, particularly those from marginalized communities. Through candid conversations with birth workers, healthcare providers, and mothers, she champions inclusive healthcare and raises awareness about disparities in mental health. Known for her intelligence, compassion, as well as dedication, Dr. Chowa's patients and colleagues consistently commend her for a thoughtful and empathetic approach to care. Her work exemplifies a commitment to reshaping healthcare delivery and ensure that all patients, especially new mothers, receive the care that is accessible, personalized, as well as empowering. Everyone, please put your hands together. Let's welcome Dr. Chowa to the stage.
Hi.
Hey, Doc, what's up?
Nothing much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on here.
Of course, I've read your bio a couple of different times, right? Because you sent it to me, and I had a chance to reread it multiple times. So this lady's dope. And then I'm looking at you. She's young at that. Like, have you been able to do so much in your time? And you went Harvard. Come on, man. Let's get going. I'm excited to have you on this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, I will say only but God. That's all I can say. So.
Listen, he's working through you. You're exemplifying, what success looks like. And I'm happy to host this podcast and share your story. So, Doc, please introduce yourself so we can vibe with you.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Chowa. I am originally from a very small country called Eswatini. It is a country of 1 million people. It is an absolute monarchy in Africa. So I grew up in a kingdom. So I grew up with rolling hills and kings and princesses and just had a really lovely upbringing. I, at a young age, had an encounter with just the healthcare system. My grandmother was sick and she had suffered a stroke, and I used to participate in her care with my mom. And so I got to see healthcare inequities that existed within the healthcare system in Africa. And that sort of prompted me to want to do medicine at a very, very age. So I think I was about maybe 8 when I decided I want to do medicine.
Wow.
And at 9 years old, we moved to America. And so I lived in California, where my mom finished some schooling. And then she moved us and the family to Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, a small city called Menominee, where I was the only Black person in my it was like 1 or 2 Black people at the school, but
Wow.
there wasn't that many people. And then moved from there, graduated high school there, went to University of Pittsburgh for my undergraduate studies, as well as medical school. Then finished medical school in Pittsburgh, then went to Boston, where I did my emergency residency training. And then I came to Atlanta, Georgia, where I got my first job out of school in academics, worked there for about 7 years. And then I started my own business, which I do concierge medicine.
Man, that is already dope. That's a lot. You went from country to country, then you went from state to state. We went from coast to coast. And then, oh man, and you're talking about, you're like one, maybe a handful of people that look like you growing up in like Wisconsin, which I didn't even know Black people lived in Wisconsin, but oh well,
Yeah.
you did that. and now you're here changing lives and affecting change within, system. So I love your background. I love that. And I love the fact that, such an early age, inspired by your grandmother, that you wanted to make a difference in people's lives. So that's who you are, personally. What about professionally? Tell me more about, you and your practice.
Sure. So as I said, I initially came in and I worked for what we say academic institutions. So I worked for a large academic hospital where I was, teaching residents medical. And I really went into that because I wanted to be a part of the pipeline, right? I wanted to mentor people who look like me, because in my field of emergency medicine, there's not a lot of people of color. And so I really wanted to give back. I also was involved in a lot of global health projects or projects around the world. I put on the first emergency medicine conference with some of my colleagues in Eswatini, actually, where I grew up, Swaziland. And so I did a lot of that work. And then during COVID, I got a job as an assistant medical director and was really excited to implement change and just be a part of it. And I soon got a little bit beat up, I would say. I think once you get into administrative tasks, you start to see things and you get to see, is right. And how a lot of times we are driven by budget and budget constraints. And so I did not love that. And I also just saw how COVID impacted communities of color. And I saw my own people like me coming in, and I saw them, COVID and being on the ventilators and dying. And I would say that was an experience that I would have never imagined that I would have gone through in my career, right? To live through a pandemic, to see the effects on the community. And so after that, I would say that our hospital systems became very overwhelmed. We had one hospital in my city that closed down. And so it just became busy. And every day going into the emergency department, I have to sit in the car and pray, sit in the car to meditate, because I'm like, Lord, I need you to give me all the strength to make it through the shift today. Right. And I knew that something needed to change, because I, for one, am not somebody who will something for 10, 20 years and not have a plan to figure out how I'm going to get out of it. Right. And so I think I was inspired, number one, by my own decision to divorce, something that I never thought in my life that I would do, being the only person in my family. And, but I realized that was a path I needed to take, and it was an act of bravery. And so that, I felt like, helped me make a lot of hard decisions in life, where it was like, something you thought you'd be in for life, right? And, reasons and the things that have happened, it is not your path right now, and you just have to take that leap of faith. And so knowing that God had guided me in difficult decisions, such as divorce, I felt like, work through every aspect of my life to see how I can get peace and how I can, I do and do it passionately. Because for sure, look at all these people who are, and so I used to think about what career I wanted to do and what I wanted to do. And, a mentor who did concierge medicine and, find out more about this. And he would go into the homes of his clients and he would see them. He would do everything that he needed to do to keep them out of the hospital. And he had me cover a couple shifts while he was gone on vacation. And so I got to be a part of the family, got to chat with, 100-year-old lady. I'd go check on, day with her family. And I was like, wow, this is really, back to medicine. And it's so much compassion that's involved in here. You get to be a part of the family. You get to take the fear away from going into the hospital, and you get to take care of people at home. And so I looked at that and I was like, okay, I'm work towards doing this thing. And I have no business knowledge. I don't have an MBA, right? We do not get medical education in terms of business and medicine. Chiropractors do, other, but medical doctors generally do not get a medical education. And so I probably was more overly confident in my ability to do this because I'm like, I did hard things. And
right. Went to Harvard. Come on.
I did hard things. I could do this. And so I jumped right in there and I started my own business. I actually thought I was going to work in my job for a little bit before starting the business. But, I ended up telling my job, I was like, this is what I want to do. Can you all support me? And when you work for an academic institution, you cannot, it's called a conflict of interest. You just cannot do those two things. And so they're like, no, you can't. Maybe things will change in the future. Maybe just hang on. And I went to sleep that night and I woke up in the morning and I sent my resignation letter and I quit my job and I said, I'm going to do this thing. And I started my business.
And how long ago was this? You started the business?
2023, July.
2023. And so looking back now, do it all over again. Would you still make that same decision?
I felt like that was a decision I had to make in order to get me to the point where I had to figure things out in a fashion quickly. I had to, it almost like propelled me. It's like, you have a job, girl. So you got to eat. So like you have to make this work. However, I had to do it differently. I would have tried to figure out a way to work with my job. I don't think though there would have been any difference, to be fair, because I think even if I gave it 6 months for the job to figure out how to keep me there, I actually think deep down in my heart that they would not have budged, but it would have allowed them to probably figure out who else to get in the next 6 months. It would have been more professional courtesy. So that's the only thing that I regret because I loved my colleagues. I loved my boss. And I feel that, I'm in a bind at that moment. But I thought in my spirit, it was the right thing to do. And that was a choice that I make. So I'm on the fence because in one regard, I thought I wouldn't be here where I am if I didn't just go full force. I think it would have been like, 5 in the line. But on a sense, I bad because I put them in a bind where they're like had to somebody to, replace me. There's that.
Do you think COVID actually changed you or just allowed you to refocus back to the person who you originally wanted to be?
I think it refocused me because I think, I look at it and because a lot of people in medicine, physicians are burnt out. And I think you have to think, am I burnt out because I don't like patient care? Or am I burnt out because of the system and the job that I work for? And I think most of us who went into medicine for the reasons of helping communities and providing healing, for most of us, that is not the part that is burning us out, right? The part that is burning us out, it's the bureaucracy of medicine, it's the business of medicine, the ability to, not on our own terms. And medicine has changed and it continues to change. And so I think for many of us, that is what it is. And so I don't think COVID changed my, desire for healing people with dignity. I think what COVID did, it uncovered a lot, right? It uncovered a lot of issues with our system. And it just made me feel like this is not how I want to do it. This is not how I want to practice.
So I'm interested in knowing, you're a whole medical doctor. Obviously, you can go back to any hospital system and you can use that, that license that you've obtained over all these years. But your company is EM Care 2, and it's medical practice that provides personalized in-home healthcare with a strong focus on postpartum health as well as wellness. You have to use your medical degree for that, or no?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Business. You have some knowledge of, patient care. I'm sure a business person could have come up with this idea. However, you see companies like Amazon and all these people trying to do healthcare, and it's not really working out because you can't really always make healthcare a business. Like there's some of it, that intuition, right? It's empathy, it's compassion, it's personalized care. And so you can't treat everybody like a cookie, cutter. So delivering personalized care to patients, you do require a level of medical knowledge, because you need to know what people need. You have to be able to customize everybody's plan to, who. And so I would say that absolutely my degree came in handy. I wouldn't be able to do the business that I do without that.
Speaking of the business that you do, you said something that I picked up on. So here you are, you're this highly educated Black female who also attended Harvard University and have multiple degrees from University of Pittsburgh, right? But you said that having a medical degree didn't prepare you from the business standpoint of running an organization. It provides you with information on how to care for people, but not how to run a business. Expand on that.
So I will say, I don't know if you ever read the book E-Myth Revisited, and if you haven't, you should read it. So I ended up reading this early on in my business, and it talks about a baker who loves baking, and she decides she's going to. She hates working for her employer, whoever she's working for, and she decides that she's going to now open up her business and bake cookies, because she's so amazing at baking cookies, right? And so she goes to bake cookies, and now she's like, yeah, I'm so good at, I'm baking, and let me just get some people to run my phones. They'll do a little marketing for me. They'll do all these things, and I'm just going to focus on baking my cookies. And initially everything was going good, and then come to find out, the person on the phone was fumbling things. The person who's supposed to be looking at inventory is fumbling things. And all of that spilled over to her business. And so therefore her business now, and now you are doing all the work. You're trying to figure everything out. And so she basically had to learn to put on her entrepreneur cap, right? And so if you're going to go into business as a technician, it's not just good enough that you have a technical skill or something to do, because there's business that you have to learn. So you have to know how to answer calls and how to talk to people. You have to know how to market. You can't rely on somebody to market for you, because they don't know your business. You know your business. You rely on people to do things for you. So you have to learn about everything. And so I didn't know that, right? And so I'm thinking hire a marketing company to market for me. They don't know my business as much as I do. Sure. I don't even know who my target initially. So how am I hiring somebody to do this for me, right? And so that's how you end up losing the money. You're giving up all your, people to run the business for you. And so I had to learn that I got to go back to, business. Business does that mean for me, right? That means I got to read. So I had to read the books. I had to go on the YouTube. I had to figure out how to use the social media. I had to figure out how to talk to people. I had to go on the ground, meet people, tell them about my business, right? And all of that learning. And I mean, even until joined a group that's called for doctors who want to learn, business skills, have an individual coach who helps me, and so constant learning. I'm a great doctor, right? I believe that wholeheartedly. However, that's not enough to provide the care and to run the business that I do. That is not enough to make it in business. It's not.
Listen, folks, if you're just joining, welcome to another episode of Health Hustle Chronicles, where the grind meets growth in the world of healthcare. Today, we've connected with Phindile Chowa. She's a medical doctor, board certified medical physician based in Atlanta, Georgia. She's completed both her undergraduate studies and medical education at the University of Pittsburgh, and went on to finish her emergency medicine residency at Harvard University. And with this extensive experience in leading academic hospitals, Dr. Chowa, she quickly rose to an administrative role within the emergency department, where she focused on improving patient experiences, streamlining healthcare delivery. But the COVID-19, that pandemic profoundly shaped her and understanding of healthcare, revealing critical gaps in access and compassion within the system. Motivated by these insights, Dr. Chowa reimagined her medical career to place patient dignity and personalized care at the forefront. And right now, we're just digging into her background. She's sharing some really dope and pivotal stories about her journey to impacting people just like you. So, Doc, you talked about how that, you got married up in Africa, you transitioned all the way to California, then Menominee, Wisconsin, right? Ended up at Harvard University, and then now you're in Atlanta. But you also talked about how you got married and then you decided to make that pivot to go away from that relationship to benefit you. So my question to you is, I know culturally, a lot of cultures
Mhm.
like extremely high marriages and relationships. What was the
Mhm.
impact to your family, like your mom and your dad and all that good stuff?
Yeah. I think that my respect and my decisions, I think they know that I don't make decisions lightly.
Sure.
And so, when it came to when there is, disruption, fracturing because
Sure.
of, whether it's infidelity or other things, it's not unrepairable. And so, when I made that decision, believe my mom that this is not a decision made lightly. And so she supported my decision wholeheartedly, because ultimately, when you are in one direction and your partner's not moving in that direction with you,
Yes.
I think it makes things, and example, the male kids, I picket fence, white fence. I
Right.
went on that, right? And so, my partner that,
Mm.
right? And maybe he thought he wanted that, and we all do, we're dating and we say things,
Sure.
and so that was the future that he wanted. And that presented circumstances within the relationship. And so ultimately, my parents supported my decision. Culturally, yes, I'm sure it was definitely a change within my extended family, but there's so much love within my extended family that nobody's even actually ever asked me about it. I go home and no, but we don't. So
Right. Okay.
it's not anything. I think people trust me as a person that if that's a decision that I made, then it must have been something that had to happen.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
you also shared that you're like one of that look like you in Wisconsin. So help me understand some of like those challenges, maybe those pitfalls. You had to overcome, Black female, studying to be a medical professional, transitioning from state to state, going to school. Help me understand more of those challenges.
Yeah. So, when I will say when I was in California, I've always known I wanted to be a doctor, but I would
Yeah.
say sometimes I'm not saying I was a lazy student, but sometimes if things were, like in California it was, and so I
Yeah.
was good at certain subjects, and then when I was bored, I would, ditch class and I would hang out outside the street and not be in school in my ninth and 10th grade year in high school. And so when my parents made the decision to go to Wisconsin, initially, I think it was really, really difficult. But when I'm back, I do think that it, helped me and my siblings in a positive manner. For example, when we went to one, you can't just ditch school. It's an indoor school. So you
Okay.
can't just walk off the campus. And then in California, they give you your subjects. And in Wisconsin, you have a college counselor, you're talking about college, you're talking about, all sorts of things. And also in Wisconsin, it allowed me to do half day homeschool. And
Okay.
so I'm not a learner who I can't sit in a classroom, probably why I ditched school ninth and 10th grade year, right? So I can't sit in the classroom all day. And so they had this option for me that I could take, advanced placement classes at home. And so I would go to school until 11 a.m. and then I'd go home and do self-directed learning on the computer and do whatever the heck I wanted.
Right.
And so that was a benefit in going to Wisconsin, was I was able to take college level classes. I had the college mentorship there to be able to, succeed. I obviously, being a Black woman in Wisconsin was difficult. I would say, first day of class, staring at you is like the TV shows for cafeteria, and everybody's like,
Right.
and then you're
Right.
like, here we go. And I remember the first day of school, I went to everybody staring, like watching where I'm gonna go, and I go and I sit where the football players are. And then this cheerleader comes up to me and then she's like, excuse me, this is where the football players sit. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, y'all can join me. They can come. Tell them to come. So
Yeah.
I was like, this is like,
Yeah.
they came, sat down, and, I'm eating and they look at me and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm eating my food. And then this girl comes from the table and she's like, do you want to come join us at our table? And I was like, sure. And I go over there and she's like, we're in band and choir. And then I was like, okay, and then soon I just met with them. And then I ended up doing, I did speech and debate. So I was very good at interpretive art. And so I did dramatic interpretation. I got to be first in the state of Wisconsin for, prose, a
Let's go.
category, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was able to do a lot in theater and things in Wisconsin. And I would say, yes, my race, difficult at times. One thing I'll tell you about the people of Wisconsin, oftentimes it was like it's a matter of knowing and
Yes,
ignorance.
right.
I think people would say things, but it wasn't from hate. It was always from a place of ignorance. Now, some
Sure.
people will say there is no excuse for ignorance, but think about it. I mean, if you're in the middle and you don't have much exposure and you only have what TV is going to show you, you're
Right.
going to have, misconceptions. For example, people would come up and be like, "You want to smoke marijuana?" Or "I love Tupac. Do you love Tupac?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'll get out of my." Or people would say, and it was to educate. But I would say I never faced the level of racism in Wisconsin that I did in other places
Mm.
in the country, right? And so I probably experienced more racism in Boston than I did in Wisconsin, where there are no Black people. I experienced a lot of kindness in Wisconsin and ignorance, but there were lots of kind people. And I don't think that I would have been able to bring those experiences in life. I wouldn't have benefited from that if I hadn't gone through that experience. So it's a part of experience that I take with me.
Yes.
Would I want to go back to Wisconsin? No, would
No.
not. It was great. But I would say it was a pivotal time in my life. Needed that to shape who I am, to understand, people, to know how to with people sometimes. And also it just allowed me to be able to do well in high school and have opportunities that I may not have had in California.
Listen, Doc, a lot of people are going to listen to this. They're going to watch this. They're going to see your face. They're going to be like, you know what? She's a Black female. She's educated. She looks like me. And she went to Harvard. That's an accomplishment that a lot of people would love to make. So I'm interested in knowing, one, how did you get into Harvard? And two, what was your experience like?
So I did Harvard residency. So
Okay.
I'll explain what that means. So I mean, I did my undergraduate at the University of Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and I did medical school at University of Pittsburgh. So University of Pittsburgh. Well, I'll back up. When I was in Wisconsin, I was going to take a year off of school because I was younger than everybody. I had skipped a year, I think in like third or fourth grade. And so I wanted to go to Mexico and spend a year through a
We
Rotary.
all do. Let's go.
Yeah, I wanted to college my first year. And so I was actually slated to go to Mexico for my first year, everything covered. And then my dad started talking to his friends and they were like, "Why would you let your daughter go by herself?" And so he changed his mind. He did not want me to go anymore for that year. He was like, "This is like crazy." And so he refused me to go. And this was in the spring. So I had to figure out where to go to college. And I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't taken my SATs, none of that. And so I basically took my SATs and I was like, I did not study. I want to go to Mexico. So if I don't do well on this, then I can just go to Mexico. So
Right.
I think I did not study for my SATs and I just took them. And I can't say it was great. And then he was like, "You need to apply for college." And so I was like, well, there's no college that is taking applications. And then here, behold, the University of Pittsburgh that does rolling. I had to apply. So I applied for that, the most basic application. Did not want to go to college
Right.
my first day. I
Kicking and
wanted to go to
screaming at this
Mexico.
point. Yeah. Mhm.
And then this darn school took me and accepted me. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just do this and then I'll transfer later because it's also an expensive school. I'm out of state. My mom worked in Wisconsin. I could have
Okay.
gone to school for free in Wisconsin. But I just was a kid who wanted to do whatever she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I made it to go to an expensive school in University of Pittsburgh, where I struggled to figure out how to, pay for my tuition, to do everything to try to get by. And then completed my undergraduate. I applied for medical school throughout the country. But I couldn't afford to go on all the interviews because you had to fly, you had to get hotels. And, I remember when I paid for all my med school applications and then I don't even know how I got tickets to go or may have, but I applied to, I flew to 3 places. I flew to California and Tennessee.
Okay.
Actually, it's 2 places. That's all I could afford. So,
Okay.
and when I got 3 acceptances to medical school, I canceled all the rest because I was like, I can't afford to fly all over for these applications. I'll pick one of these 3, And so I ended up at University of Pittsburgh because they gave me a scholarship in medical school. And then after that, you apply, you try to figure out what specialty you want to go into in medical school. And you do this matching process, which is like a dating game. You basically, send your applications they invite you to interview, and then you go and interview, and then you rank all the schools in your list, and then they rank you. And if you rank one school number one and they rank you within their top 1 through 16 or however many slots they have, then it's a match, then that's where you go. And so I did rank Harvard number one. I wanted to go over there because I felt that at the end of the day, I will get an education, but on top of that, if I ever decide to do something more in life, beyond medicine or being a leader or an expert in something, that I do have authority to say, I have had great, and I'm able to speak these things. And I love the impact and footprint around the world. That's how I ended up in Harvard. So that's how it happens.
I love the story. I absolutely love the story. I would also love to know more about what pitfalls or misconceptions are there as being, a Black female physician?
I mean, we're living right now. I mean, everybody thinks that somebody has something.
Right.
What people don't really understand is 2.8 of physicians are Black female physicians. So we're not taking anybody's spot here. I think people have, right, it's like they don't question the white who is in, a position of being a doctor. But here comes a woman of color, and now people are having questions about whether you are qualified to be here. Now, mind you, to be qualified to get into residency, you have to meet certain score requirements. You have to have good letters from your, professors. You have to do well on your board exams. They're not taking unqualified people to be medical doctors. Right. And this is the world doesn't know this because everyone's just spewing this hate against diversity and inclusion. And so they think that someone handed you the spot. So that is the misconception that people have, is that when you're here and you're a woman of color in a position like I have, that somebody somehow handed you this. Right. We worked for it, and we worked even harder. I remember telling one girl, that, my parents had to work twice as hard. I had to stay up. I used to be in the lab, I used to be in the lab on the weekends. Now I kept the Sabbath. And so I would not study from Friday night to Saturday. And so I would take an entire day of rest, and I would not study. I would just, do other things. And that when everybody's studying 7 days a week, I would make up on Sundays. I would be in the lab, my anatomy. On weekdays, I was very diligent in what I did. I remember telling this girl that, like, I have to work twice as much as, white colleagues. And she was from Sweden. She didn't understand. She's like, I don't get that. And I was like, you don't understand, but I have to, because if I don't do well on this test, no one's just looking at me like, oh, like, let me give her, like, going to look at like she does not belong here. Well, that's not true. We all belong here. And I was like, girl, like, trust me on like, live it. I know this. People, I will always think that I don't deserve a spot here. I will always work twice as hard. So instead of people thinking that we, don't belong here or stole this position, they should understand that we worked twice as hard to literally cross barriers. Just yesterday, this field was dominated by all white males, right? And so think of our ancestors, what they had to even just get a spot in the school, because people did not think they were qualified, So, I mean, it's world in, and you have to have tough skin, and I used to be a little bit more bothered by these comments, but I know I've earned it here. And, I know I'm smarter than these people. So it doesn't bother, but I know for, my younger colleagues who are coming out of it, it's definitely a source of stress. The imposter syndrome can be, but it's just, walking and knowing that you earned a spot where you are.
I mean, Doc, honestly, this is the reason why I wanted to host your story on the show, because I feel like representation matters. And I'm looking at you. Again, very highly educated Black female that's actually doing the job or obtain the credentials that a lot of people that look like us would love to obtain, but you actually went out there and did it. So representation truly matters, especially as we're navigating this health system on our own, right? And we walk into a healthcare facility. I would like to see people that look like me providing care to me. And it just makes me feel safe that you took the time to not only educate yourself, but you know a little bit more about my well-being, what's going to make me happy. And you've been through those struggles together, you know?
Absolutely.
So I understand that. To understand, in your opinion, what do you think holds people back from accomplishing their goals?
Fear. I would say that our biggest enemy. I think most people are afraid to fall, they're to fail. And so, I have these, my daughter at 6, and it's, not wanting to do so, fear that you won't be good at it or that you
Right.
will fail. And so I try to encourage her to try. And failing is a part of life. People saying no is a part of growing. And so I think people don't accomplish their goals because they fail. And I'll give you, when I was, I started off people who wanted to do medicine. We had a big group, like college students who were a close-knit group, and we all went into it wanting to do medicine. And then when came organic chemistry in college, that's when people started falling by wayside, because organic chemistry was hard. Now we joined this class and everybody was failing this class. I remember a month in, I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, we're all getting D's and F's on these exams, and people dropped out of the class. And
Okay.
me, dumb me, is like, well, I'm just going to I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And so I failed organic chemistry. That was my first and ever class I've ever failed. I got a D- in organic chemistry. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
for a pre-medical student, that is like, oh my gosh, like
That was like a death sentence.
the sentence. And for a lot of people who failed or dropped out, that was the end of their dreams, of their medical. Like, I'm not doing this. It's too hard. I have to get through organic 1, 2 calculus. Like, I'm not doing all this. Too hard. So they took other routes. And I remember I was like, well, no, like I want to be like, we're going to make this happen. So I had to go back and figure out, like, well, what happened? Why did I fail? I failed because I had a terrible teacher, right? And she was a teacher. She graded on a curve. And if you're grading on a curve, you're a bad teacher, right? And so I retook organic 1, would spend every day, in with teacher's assistants. Every day after class, I would stay, I'd ask questions. And I got, an A+ on organic 1, and I got an A+ on organic 2. And I had to figure out why I failed, and I had to figure out how not to fail. But I did not let the failure deter me from my dreams and my goals. And I really used that mentality throughout. And so you keep it moving. Business, you cut sometimes you lose some money. Sometimes people say no. And that doesn't mean that your business is a failure. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. It means, let's figure out why people said no. Let's assess. Let me figure out why that failed, and let me pivot. It doesn't mean, you are going to have no's, and you have to just keep going. You have to have, and such a belief. I told you I do a lot of reading, and, I was reading Bezos's book, right, store or whatever. And this man, can't see when he turned a profit. He had belief in himself as a child that he was supposed to do great things, right? When he even started this everything store process, he believed in himself, and he would fail. They would write about him in the news. About him. He would lose employees. He lost money. His stocks fell. But this man continued to believe in himself, and look at where he is now, right? But didn't happen overnight. He failed a million times, but he believed in his dream, he believed in his goal, and he kept going. And so that's what we have to channel as humans, is like, you're going to fail. You're going to hear no's. You have to know how to pivot, and you have to understand and believe in what you're doing, and just keep moving.
Doc, tell about your business and the impact that you're making.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, when I initially started I was thinking I'm going to go and take care of business people who are too busy to basically see a doctor, and they want to be seen at home, or families. And soon after I opened, I started noticing getting a lot of moms calling me, moms with young children who either needed their kids being seen, or they needed to be seen themselves, or moms who are postpartum and just did not, want to leave their newborn or their other children. And so when I would walk into these homes and I would see mom, and and maybe they check on their C-section scar, and Then we're talking about their mental health, and brought me back to my own journey as a mom and what I went through postpartum, and how I could have done things differently. And so I was like, wow, it was an aha moment for me, because it was like, these women need more than just like, let me just put up over this. It's almost like you give birth and then nobody sees you until 6 weeks. And in that 6-week period of time, you're literally carrying all sorts of things. You're carrying mental health issues. You're carrying breastfeeding issues, physical ailments. And you don't want to leave. And people say, why don't you just call your doctor? Well, one, you're justifying your symptoms. It's just, I'm just feeling alone. It's part of postpartum. And so I realized that our moms more, right? And so I came up with, a system where I tell the moms they give birth. I don't just, allow them to necessarily, if somebody hires me, we're working together from the minute you get home. I'm coming to check on you. I'm doing critical checks, bleeding, screening you for issues. And I'm also advocating for you within the healthcare system, because a lot of moms don't feel heard. I have moms who came to me because they did not feel heard. Moms who went to the ER with a problem and they were ignored, or went to their provider with a program and they were ignored, and they were not always listening, right? And so people look at people in a cookie cutter way, and they don't always personalize that care. And so that is the what I do, is trying to provide that advocacy and that care and bridge the gaps that exist, because what we know is that many of the deaths that happen, surrounding pregnancy, happen after a woman gives birth. So there's a lot of attention that goes with women, when they're pregnant. But once they give birth, after that, they're kind of left to fend for. Women are dying, and they're dying at home. They're dying, they're going to bed, they're not waking up. So you can't rely on the fact that somebody's going to call or get help when they need it. Sometimes moms may not have any symptoms. They need people to check on them, and we're not doing it in this country, because in a lot of places in the world, they're sending people to moms' homes after they give birth. They're having 1 week, post-delivery. These are the things that we need to do better as a country. And so my dream is to revolutionize, how we deliver postpartum moms. And I do this through my business, but I also use my voice. I put on, events, I use podcasts, and I try to do it in as many ways that I can to raise awareness, because our moms are dying. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die after giving birth. And so something has to change. And if women are dying after they give birth, then we also have to put the same amount of energy that we are in getting them to deliver after, they give birth. What doing to safeguard them as well.
I like that. And because you kind of a little bit your book, and I also know you got a podcast. I would like you to talk about both, because I did have an opportunity to listen to a couple episodes of your podcast, and it was so eye-opening for me as a guy, because here I am. I'm always thinking. I guess guys, we are selfish. I mean, we're not kind of. We are. I zoomed in on myself. If I can zoom myself back in.
There you go.
There we go. I was listening to the podcast, and I was thinking, it just made me reconnect to thinking how selfish that I was, even though I appreciated my wife and her birth and kids that I have. I never really put myself in her shoes. And your podcast was so eye-opening and awakening for me that women do struggle after the fact, by themselves, even though, these healthy babies, they feel alone, and the body issues, the mental disparities that they go through. So tell me more about your book, and then also your podcast.
Absolutely. So started this path towards postpartum care. I wanted to give women a resource or a guide to be able to do, the body scan to see everything's okay. And so my book starts off and just talks about, my experience and then it goes into a lot of planning, postpartum planning. And so I go through with moms, like, who's going to be allowed to come into the house, right? Who's going to help us? Who is going to cook? Who is going to do the laundry? Who is allowed, and what types of setup do we need when they come to their home, right? And so it's the postpartum planning that happens at the beginning of the book. And then the book goes on, and each week postpartum, it asks mom, how are you feeling, bleeding? Are you drinking enough water? What is your blood pressure? And then there's also meditate. There's words of encouragement as they're going through each one of those weeks. And so it's a really good guide, especially for people who want something to fill in and they want something to sort of say, okay, like what am I supposed to be looking for now, and what am I be doing?
Right.
And so that is the book I wrote. It is on Amazon, and it's just a lovely guide. I also just give it to my clients. When my clients sign on to my services, I do give them that book as well.
Speaking of your services, I would like to know,
Mhm.
inquiring minds want to know, how can people pay for your services? Can they get government assistance to help out with this? Is we talking about Medicaid, private pay?
Yeah, so right now it's cash, and I'll explain that, because in order to do and provide the care that I want to provide to my patients, I have to also do it on my terms.
Okay.
When you are contracted with insurance or government, they're going to tell you how to practice and provide the care to your clients. And in
Okay.
order to provide the personalized services that I do provide, I don't work with insurance companies. However, I do provide receipts for my moms to go and get reimbursed by their insurance companies. So they can
Okay.
take a receipt and they can get that money back. Medicare, Medicaid likely will not reimburse at all for that because it's government. And so that's a little bit more complicated. But if they have private insurance, they will get reimbursed for that. Now, if somebody has an HSA, so a high savings account, they can use that to pay for my services,
Okay.
which I would encourage for a lot of moms who are thinking about giving birth, is switching over to an HSA plan, which usually comes with high deductible plans. Reason being, you're probably going to meet your deductible with your baby being born. And then all that money that you're putting into your HSA, which is tax deductible, you
Okay.
can use that towards everything else. So you can pay for your doulas with the HSA. You can pay for my services with the HSA. You can pay for the diapers, the formula with the HSA. And so for a lot of moms who are thinking and doing that planning, it almost makes sense to get that high deductible plan and get your HSA that year that you're giving birth. But everyone's family is different. You got to do what works for you. But that's generally how people can pay for my services.
Another question related to your business, really quick.
Mhm.
If someone contracted your services, how long would you and that person be engaged in a relationship together? Is this like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So most of my clients there, the people that I've started with are still here. There are few who probably terminated their relationship after 3 or 6 months, but most of my clients stay with me. And so depending on what they sign up for, so I have membership and I have one-time visits. And I've had moms who've done many one-time visits and then they decide to transition to sort of like a primary care membership and just stay on with me as their doctor. And so the relationship really depends on what patients want from it. And so initially, patients may come to me wanting immediate help, emergent help. And so we get through that period of time. And then if they really love the relationship that we form and they want to stay longer, then they can stay longer. So it just really depends on that person's needs.
please share the information for people to get a hold of your business, and then the website as well.
Absolutely. So if people need to get in touch with me, they can find me on Instagram at Dr. Chowa. I would say that's really the easiest because once you get there, you can branch off. There's links everywhere. DRCHOWA. I'm also on LinkedIn under the same name. My website, you can find me. Business website is emcareto.com. But you also can get, if you want a speaker for your event, I have a website, drchowa.com. So I'm really everywhere. I'm the only one in Atlanta, Georgia. So you can just find me very easily.
I didn't know you do speaking engagements as well. So
I
that's
do.
nice. We definitely want to connect with the doc on that. All right.
Yes.
Outside of, because you're already busy, sure if you have time for anything else, but do you have any passion projects or things that you do that are separate from work?
Passion projects, ultimately a passion for global health. I think the world is a bit crazy right now. And, I have a kid. I'm not as able to take certain risks and travel. But I
Sure.
think ultimately when she gets old enough, I'll probably start going back and, helping medical students and in foreign countries, particularly where I grew up. I love that. I also love music. I'm a musician. I play the piano.
Wow.
Yeah, I love salsa dancing. I dance for fun. That is my pastime. And I love to travel. So I travel any moment that I can get. I'm always going somewhere.
That's really dope. Hey guys, listen, this has been another episode of Health Hustle Chronicles, where the grind meets growth in the world of healthcare. As you know, I bring you the freshest, the livest guests from around the world. From around today, we had a very special guest and goes by the name of Dr. Phindile Chowa. She's a board-certified emergency medicine physician based in Atlanta, Georgia. She completed both her undergraduate studies and medical education at the University of Pittsburgh and went on to finish her emergency medicine residency at Harvard University. With extensive experience in leading academic hospital, Dr. Chowa, she quickly rose to an administrative role within the emergency department, where she focused on improving patient experiences and streamlining healthcare delivery. The COVID-19 pandemic profoundly shaped her understanding of healthcare, revealing critical gaps in access and compassion within the system. Motivated by these insights, Dr. Chowa reimagined her medical career to place patient dignity and personalized care at the forefront. This vision gave rise to EM Care to You, a concierge medical that provides personalized in-home healthcare with a strong focus on postpartum health as well as wellness. Dr. Chowa, she mothers for often overlooked fourth trimester, ensuring that they're connected to essential partners, including lactation consultants, pelvic floor therapists, and mental health professionals. Through these collaborations, her practice offers a holistic approach to postpartum recovery, addressing both the physical as well as the emotional needs of new mothers. Dr. Chowa, she's also an author of the acclaimed book, What to Expect Next, a guide designed to empower mothers with practical tools, advocacy strategies, and support systems for navigating the postpartum journey. Unlike conventional postpartum resources, her book centers solely on maternal well-being, guiding mothers to build robust support networks and develop self-care routines during this critical period. In addition to her medical practice and writing, Dr. Chowa, she hosts the podcast, Fourth Trimester Voices, where you can find it almost anywhere, including Apple. You got Apple and Spotify.
Apple, Spotify, yeah, anywhere. YouTube.
She sheds on healthcare of women, particularly those from marginalized communities, through candid conversations with birth workers, healthcare providers, and mothers. She champions inclusive healthcare and raises awareness about disparities in mental health. Known for her intelligence, compassion, and dedication, Dr. Chowa's patients and colleagues consistently commend her for her thoughtful and empathetic approach to care. Her work exemplifies a commitment to reshaping healthcare delivery to ensure that all patients, especially new mothers, receive care that is accessible, personalized, as well as empowering. Dr. Chowa, I'm going to turn it over to you to leave us with any parting words to close out this segment. What do you got?
What I got? Don't give up on your dreams. If you had a seed in you and you believe that this is something you're supposed to be doing, don't give up on it because it's hard. Just keep going.
Love that. Doc. Thank you so much with your presence, providing tons of insight and education on this topic, but more importantly, allowing people to get to know you, your journey, your struggle, and the impact that you're making. Doc, stay blessed. Until next time, let's keep hustling.
Thank you. Bye.